My hag of a stepmom gave away my PlayStation 4 while I was away in college, so I rent out her house while she was on her honeymoon with her newest husband. Posted by Young Sour Swede. I'm an only son. My mom died of ovarian cancer at only 55, 5 years ago. It broke my dad's heart. They had been together since college and were the same age, with my dad being a month older. I'm 22 and I'm about to graduate college with my degree in chemistry when the main events start to occur. I went to college on a full ride scholarship. This is important later. My dad met my now stepmom when she was my mom's nurse at the hospital where she spent her final days. My stepmom, Grace, played all the right notes to gain my dad's trust. She was empathetic to him, nurturing, comforting after my mom passed. I was 17 and old enough to sense that she was just trying to weasel her way into getting my dad's resources, but it was up to my dad if he wanted to be in a relationship with her. I was in my final year of public school and had just won a scholarship to attend college out of the country the following year. My dad mourned my mom for a year, and that whole time, Grace would check in on him by phone every month or so, in my opinion, to scope out the possibility of sinking her hooks in him. After a year passed, Grace took the gloves off and went hard after my dad. Grace was only 40 when she and my dad started seeing each other, and I didn't like her, but at the same time, my dad at least didn't seem so depressed anymore, so I tried to be less pessimistic about her and give her the benefit of the doubt. In my gut, I didn't trust her though. But we are Scandinavian, and at least my family, the son does not tell his father what to do or even offer any opinion. Grace is from the Czech Republic, if you're wondering. My father was a very successful banker during his career and amassed quite a portfolio of wealth. I'll spare you the details, but after 6 months of dating, Grace and my father are married. My dad never really got over my mom though, and he was getting weaker and weaker even though he was only 57. Since his health was fading, he called me to him and asked me point blank, "Boy, what do you need to set you up in this life?" I told him I didn't need anything. I'm a man and I can take care of myself. But what are you even talking about, Dad? You're going to be around for decades yet. I did remind him that he had living sisters with children, my aunts and cousins, and I also reminded him that I had a full scholarship to college, so don't worry about giving me any cash. He was dead only a year later at 59. I, of course, have seen lots of Hollywood movies, so I consider the conspiracy theory that maybe my dad's nurse wife poisoned him and made him sign over all his money to her. But I really honestly don't think that's what happened. Other relatives didn't like Grace either, but they knew my dad was totally in love with my mom and that her death utterly broke him. Well, long story short, my dad bequeathed his 5-bedroom house to me, even though I wasn't expecting it and didn't ask for it. He gave a small endowment to each of his sisters and their children. He left about 80% of all of his existing money to Grace, which amounted to several hundreds of thousands of dollars. My dad ignored me because he's generous to a fault and still gave me several tens of thousands of dollars, which were of course very useful to me. Grace tried to put on a friendly front, but I could tell she was angry as heck that she didn't get my dad's house too. That belonged to me, and I had the legal papers to prove it. She was especially mad because we live in an extremely upscale and trendy location, and houses are hard to come by and easily sold for massive profit. During the first few months after my dad's death, I had the nauseating, creepy experience of knowing Grace was trying to feel me out to see if I might be into a little relationship with her. Gross. She still stayed at the house though, because over the last 3 years, she had gotten used to living there and acting like she owned it. And even though I officially owned it, I was always away at college and only visited my dad's old house once every couple of months. And even then, it wasn't to see Grace, but to see my cousins who lived just a few miles away. I downplayed the fact that it was really my house, and over the months, I think Grace gradually forgot that she had really no legal right to the house. She probably believed that sooner or later, because I never asked her for any of the hundreds of thousands of my dad's dollars that she now had, that I was somehow independently wealthy and would just give up my house to her. I knew eventually I'd hydrogen bomb this witch when she started dating some new guy only 5 months after my dad was in the ground, and one time when I came home from college after graduating, she and her new boyfriend, some sleazy looking D-bag named Ivan who was only a few years older than me, were acting like I was a guest in my own house and that they owned it. I played along. Grace told me that she gave away my PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because I'm too old to play video games. I didn't even know this kid, and you give him my PS4 to give away to some other who I don't even know? I quickly changed all my network passwords that same day. I smiled, but I knew what I had to do eventually. She also said that she and Ivan were getting married because I just can't mourn your father forever. I have to move on with life. I tell her that I graduated college and already secured employment with a local firm and will soon find a new place to live. She looks thrilled, especially the part where it looks like I'll soon have a new place to live. Then, in a patronizing way, she tells me, "You'll always have a place in our house though, and you're welcome to stay whenever you please." Thanks, Grace, really generous of you. What I really say is that I'll probably have a new place in 3 months. She says it's wonderful because she intends to go to her homeland to have a wedding with Ivan and afterward have her honeymoon. She assures me that it's a local affair. Otherwise, I'd invite you, honey, and anyway, I know you're so busy. I congratulate her, and she asks me if I can watch the house for her. Watch my own house? Sure. What I really say is, of course I'll take care of the house. I'm careful not to say your house. She and her D-bag fiance, who I am 100% sure is only there for Grace's money, go on their trip, and I immediately put out advertisements in rental websites offering to lease my house. I hire movers and have all of Grace's furniture and possessions boxed up and put into a storage rental facility. I retain all my parents' furniture that they had before my dad met Grace. Locks? Changed. All of them. Within days, I am inundated with dozens of inquiries regarding my amazing furnished house with fantastic views. I rent it to a wonderful young family, a barista and his schoolteacher wife, and their 2 preteen children. They pay me their first and last month's rent and sign a lease for a year. I warn them about my crazy stepmom who thinks this is her house, but I present them with contact information to my lawyer, which is the same lawyer that my dad retained, in case they need any assurance that I'm on the level. I also give my lawyer the information about the storage facility, including the fact that I generously paid 4 months of storage in advance, which is a whole month longer than Grace's Czech honeymoon adventure. I then found a great apartment in the city near my new place of work. There, I met a woman in a restaurant that I frequent at night after a long work day. We've been dating 6 months now and are engaged to be married. Grace, of course, tried to shriek and cause trouble when she realized that she got kicked out of my house, but my lawyer quickly shut her mouth without my having to ever speak to her garbage face again. From what I hear, her and her trash husband left the country, and I assume they're blowing through my dad's money and they'll soon be broke like chavs usually become when they taste a little bit of what they think's the good life. So maybe Grace will go and try to exploit some other lonely man into giving her his money. Speaking of money, the house that I rent out is generating so much money that I not only am able to help pay for my cousin's college, but I moved into a larger apartment of my own, together with my fiance. I love my job, but really, I could survive solely on renting Dad's old house. And to think, if Grace had only been cooler and nicer, I might have let her stay at the house, just to be a good sport. And definitely if she stayed the heck out of my room. But no, she had to act all proprietary, so I had to make her as homeless as a wedding gift. Postscript, I bought another PS4, and even though I didn't even use my old one that much, it didn't matter. It wasn't for Grace to give away. You don't give away other people's things. You give away your own things. Which is why I chose to kick Grace out of my house. Because it's mine, and I decide who stays there. Wow, that is an epic story. Everything was by the book, calculated, articulated in perfect fashion. Way to go, OP. A Dangerous Game, posted by Kurorosu. This is my first post here. I decided that this may be another method of catharsis for me. I do have many stories peppered throughout my life that I want to share, but this was the first one that came to mind. This one has to do with my childhood and dealing with a psychotic and racist aunt and uncle. When I was a child, I was often assaulted and bullied for being a mixed-blood kid, a mulatto, by both my own family and kids in school. There are many things that my aunt and uncle did to me and got away with, which I will share the highlights of later. This story, however, is not one of those. My uncle was the alpha tormentor between the two. Both my aunt and uncle still lived with my grandparents, so there was no way to avoid them because I had to go to my grandparents' house after school while my dad was still at work. My uncle liked to play games with me in order to turn me into a fearless pit dog, as he put it, when I asked him one day why he was tormenting so much. When he said that, the fact that he was being completely honest as well as smiling about it, I decided right then and there that this man was my enemy and would have to deal with him accordingly. If he wanted a pit dog, he was going to get one. After overcoming my shock of his honest answer, I said, "F you, uncle, just F you." One of the games that he loved to play was chasing me down the road to my grandparents' house, which felt like an honest attempt to literally run me over. He'd always do this as I was walking home to my grandparents' house after school. Luckily, most times he ended up just chasing me off the road. The game started like this. He would stop his truck at the end of the road that my grandparents' place was on and rev the engine of his truck 3 times. That was the signal that the game was about to begin. After the third rev, he would hit the gas and come screaming down the road toward me. I would have to leap off the road to avoid being ran over. After at least a couple of months of dealing with this, I had enough. I was tired of feeling afraid of walking down that street. I thought it over for a while before I decided that I would get revenge. On the days when I wasn't being chased, I started to count how many steps it took to get to an old stump on the side of the road that was hidden by briars. I'd walk backwards just so I could eye the distance between the end of that road and the stump so I would know when to run. 17 steps. It would take 17 steps from the time he'd start roaring down that road at me to get to that stump. The day finally came about a couple weeks later. When I heard his truck, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry. As per normal, he revved his engine 3 times and then gunned it around the corner. I waited until he was close enough before I ran as fast as I could up the side of the road and behind the stump, throwing my backpack into a deer trail that I could jump into just in case my plan failed, and then quickly turned around towards the stump and the oncoming truck bearing down on me. As expected, he followed me up the side of the road, too fixed on me to pay any attention to where he was going. The next few moments were beautiful. The briars parted like the Red Sea, and to my delight, I saw his eyes go wide as he realized what he was about to smash into. He yanked the steering wheel to the left, his front right tire going over the stump, which launched him into the air. As he flew past me, I could see the look of terror on his face, and grinning madly, I began to shout insults at him as his truck nearly flipped in midair. Instead of flipping, the truck roughly came back down on 4 wheels, and he continued down the road to my grandparents' house and parked in the gravel driveway. I grabbed my backpack, ran up the trail, and hid. I didn't come out until after dark when my dad came to get me. I knew the sound of my dad's car, a Datsun B210, so when I heard him coming up the road, I immediately came out, waved him down, and quickly jumped into the passenger seat. My dad asked me concerned as to why I was out there. At first, I just kept telling him over and over that we needed to just go straight home and under no circumstances go to my grandparents' house. When my dad kept asking why, I finally told him everything that happened. Without another word, he turned the car around, silently fuming, and drove us home. I don't know if my dad talked to my uncle after what happened, but what I do know is that game never happened again. That game, at least. A woman let her dog crap on the airport floor, so I crapped on her plans, posted by the Hofstetter. While walking to my gate at LAX, I noticed a woman whose dog was in the middle of doing its business. The woman was loudly FaceTiming with her back to the dog, so I assumed she didn't notice. That was likely the thought shared by the gentleman who tried to get her attention. "Excuse me, miss," he said in a polite tone. The woman glared at him. "Your dog," he sheepishly continued, pointing to the mid-poop pup. The woman rolled her eyes and went back to FaceTime as the man slinked away, seemingly embarrassed. "Some people," she bellowed to her FaceTime companion with no hint of irony, "are just so darn rude." When her dog finished, the woman started walking away, leaving everything right on the airport floor. Another woman tried to stop her. "You're not going to clean that up?" she asked, as shocked as the rest of us were. "They have people for that," the offender replied, disappearing into the crowd as much as someone yelling into their phone can disappear into a crowd. I stood near the pile and warned people to walk around it while someone else got a maintenance worker's attention. No one said anything. We were so shocked that anyone could be that horrible. When I got to my gate, the woman was there too. Great, we were both going to Tokyo. When I travel abroad, I get embarrassed by other Americans doing things 100 times less embarrassing than leaving animal feces on the floor of an airport. To make it worse, her dog was now barking at everyone who walked by. I have nothing against people flying with their dogs, I do it often, but it's a privilege I take seriously. My dog is well trained and behaves better than most people. He certainly behaves better than that a-hole. Speaking of a-holes, there's a pet relief area inside LAX, past security, just 2 gates away from where the party pooper let her dog go to town. It didn't matter. She was the type of person to litter 3 feet from an empty garbage can. While her dog barked at the world, the woman had moved from FaceTiming with no headphones to listening to music with no headphones. I don't like to throw around the word sociopath, but I don't know how else I could explain just how selfish and terrible of a person she was. I'd bet her car was somewhere in the long-term parking, parked across 3 spots with the paint on the bumper from the child's bike she hit without leaving a note. Everyone else tried to ignore her, sitting as far away from her as they could. I am not everyone else. I sat down right next to the horrible woman. Are you going to London on business? I said. I'm going to Tokyo, she responded gruffly, annoyed that I interrupted her DJing. "Oh," I said, "then you better hurry. That flight got moved to gate 53C. This is the flight to London." I figured I could give her a little moment of panic as payback for how terribly she was treating everyone. I didn't predict what would happen next. She grabbed her bags and her dog in a huff and stormed out of the gate without even checking. She was so self-involved, she didn't notice that the monitor at our gate still said Tokyo and almost everyone at the gate was Japanese. Based on her actions, she believed me that the flight had been moved, so now she's an a-hole for not thanking me. Some people, I thought, as I watched her rush away from the gate without stopping her, are so darn rude. The flight to Tokyo was at gate 69A, so the 53 gates were on the other side of the next terminal. And I felt guilty knowing she probably berated some poor clerk who had to explain to her that there was no gate 53C. I don't know if she made it back to this flight before we took off or not, but I didn't see her board and I don't hear her dog. Her missing her flight was not my original intention, but it would be a fine punishment for her being so rude to everyone and making a low-paid stranger clean feces off the floor. What makes me wonder if I went too far is the knowledge that Delta only has one flight to Tokyo each day. Oops, maybe she can rebook on another airline. I hear they have people for that. Oh man, it's actually comedian Steve Hofstetter, and he shows his tickets and everything in this to show this is a true thing. That is, you can tell he's a stand-up comedian, so quick on his feet, just figuring out an answer to the problem and the solution. Way to go, Steve. Comment the secret phrase below. Holy crap. See you in the next video.